So you may remember in my Q&A video that I did last week where I had many wonderful questions, so thanks again for that. I briefly mentioned, very briefly, that I wanted to indulge in a little bit more woodland photography whilst I'm here in Germany. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm massively excited to be within such a close proximity to the Alps and to Austria and even Switzerland and all the beautiful lakes down here in Bavaria, of course. But a really big part of me doesn't want to just run to the grand vistas. And I think, you know, personally, for no other reason than I find that quite easy in a way. With regards to my photography, I find it quite easily compositionally. I still thoroughly enjoy it, you know, and I'll definitely still be down there on occasions. But what really challenges me is woodland photography, and it always has. But again, it's something that I massively enjoy, and I just want to improve. You know, I really want to improve, and I thoroughly enjoy the challenge of the difficulties that I face with my composition and things like that. So that's exactly why I'm in the woodland today, really, and I've been very lucky. I came to this very woodland about 3 or 4 days ago. I actually came on my bike, and it was a beautiful sunny day. I didn't even have my camera with me. This is so close to where I live. You know, it's about 15 minutes cycle, and I've driven here this morning. It's took me about 5 minutes, and it is absolutely incredible, massively vast, and I'm so excited. You know, there's just all these gorgeous woodlands sort of surrounding Munich, and even though it's so close to the city, it's a forest. Yeah, it's called Perlacher Forst. It's a forest, you know, it's not a park in the middle of the city. So it feels like I'm out in the wilderness. There's no one around, especially this time of morning. Absolutely incredible. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about my approach that I've always had to woodland photography, and I call it the 4 Ps for the sake of this video. I was going to say I'm not a very quick learner, but I think I am. I think it's just an easy way for me to learn and to remember. I think that's what I mean. My memory is not very good. So when I can simplify something and say it's just the 4 Ps, it makes it a lot easier for myself. So I really want to talk about that today with you guys, and hopefully it'll help you out with your woodland photography. It's definitely helped me out with mine. And it's basically talking about 4 key elements that I feel can really help you to improve your woodland photography and leave the forest with some fantastic photographs that you're proud of. Now, I'm having to act fairly quickly this morning because the conditions are so good. We've obviously got beautiful fog in the background. However, there are no clouds in the sky, which means once that sun comes up in about 20 minutes, I am assuming that all that fog is going to burn off very quickly. Now, when I came to the forest about 3 or 4 days ago on my bike, I found a wonderful little location, a sort of pine forest, I believe. I'm not even there yet. I spotted this beautiful scene walking past. I'm a couple of minutes from that said pine forest, which we will get to soon. Yeah, these huge trees here just really caught my eye, and the gorgeous fog obviously creating all that atmosphere. And I think what I really like about this is it's almost like this. It's like an arrow. So there's 2 sets of trees that sort of lead right into the middle, and then because of the fog, it just becomes a sort of abyss of nothingness in the middle. And I've took a photograph like this before. I think it was in the Peak District in England, and it's like an idea of infinity, and the fog really helps to create that because you've got these 2 diagonals that come in towards the centre, and then everything just disappears. So what I'm doing is I've got my camera set up in a portrait orientation, as you can see here, and just doing a little bit of a pano, just 4 photographs from left to right. I've leveled everything out, you can see there, and it's worked fantastically well. One thing that I'd really recommend here, I haven't got a live histogram on the D7200. If I did, it'd be much easier, but just make sure that you're not clipping highlights. Do a quick pan first. Like this photograph, for example, this right hand side set of trees, it's much brighter, the sun must be rising in that direction, whereas here it's much darker. So if I set my exposure there on the left where it's quite dark, and I think, oh, everything's great, everything's dandy, by the time I get over there, things are going to be overexposed, so just be careful with that. But yeah, the panorama is just creating this beautiful scene, and because I've got my 18 to 55 on, I'm able to sort of create a bit of a compression effect almost. Whereas if I just had my wide angle and shot it like that, the trees would appear quite far away. So this is helping me to almost accentuate the vastness of these trees and this scene really. So I've chosen to shoot an aperture of f5.6, which I don't know, I think always works well in the woodland. I've focused on one of these trees, and everything else other than the trees really are going to be quite soft anyway. Even the trees are going to be quite soft. 1/3 of a second shutter speed, ISO 100, and yeah, just panning left to right. Not quite now, but we did have a bit of a red tinge almost in the sky on the right hand side, and it was just absolutely gorgeous, and a bonus really, to be honest. So a wonderful shot to start the morning, and completely unexpected. So I'll pop that shot up for you guys to see now, and then I'm going to continue towards my little pine forest there, just around the corner. So before we get to my little pine forest, I wanted to talk you guys through the first P of the 4 Ps, let's say. And I think today probably isn't a good example. You'll probably understand more when I tell you what it is. Preparation with woodland photography, I think, is so important, especially when you get conditions like this. I'm very lucky today because I came here, like I said, 3 or 4 days ago, and I guess you could say I prepared. I came here. I wouldn't have even come to this forest if I hadn't come here 3 or 4 days ago. I wouldn't have even come this morning because I wouldn't have known if it was worth coming here with my camera. I wouldn't have known if it was any good. And on top of that, the pine forest that we're going to, that's my preparation. I know that once the sun comes up and we get some side light, I know where the sun's going to come up when we get in there. It was always going to be worth coming back to with my camera. So preparation, I think, is where it has to all start. And sometimes I've seen it with other photographers. It can take years before you get a shot that you're happy with. Again, it's not a massively good example this morning because I'm very lucky with the conditions. Even though I have prepared, sometimes it can take a hell of a lot longer. But yeah, preparation is massively important. I think in a lot of other types of photography, it's not as important. I think seascapes, for example, I find them quite easy. Perhaps it just comes naturally to me, I don't know. But with regards to composition and subject matter and things like that, I don't really feel I have to prepare that much with seascapes, which is something that I enjoy because it means I can go there and just relax and be fairly certain, as long as the conditions are decent, that I'm going to come out with a good photograph. Whereas woodland, I know I have to spend a hell of a lot more time preparing. So that's the first P of the 4 Ps of woodland photography. Anyway, let's get to this pine forest whilst the light comes up. Honestly, what an awesome morning. And if you've never been to a forest or a woodland in fog ever, I would highly recommend it. It's an exhilarating experience. I absolutely love it. Honestly, it's so incredibly atmospheric. That's the word that always comes to mind. Even at the minute the fog's lifted a bit, it's thinning out a little bit. Even then, it's just absolutely gorgeous. If you can catch a morning where you've got fog and it's still like it is today, it's really special. You know, photography aside, it feels magical to be in the woodland in these conditions. It is fantastic. And then if you got your camera with you, even better. But yeah, even if I think if you've got a photographer's mind, you know, and you've never been to the woodland in the fog, and you come to a woodland when there's fog, you'll understand exactly what I'm on about. You know, you'll just wish that you brought your camera. You'll want to be taking shots all over the place, and that's probably another important factor with the fog. You know, it comes back to the preparation. It's really, really good to have some areas at least prepared, or even compositions better yet, because it's just so beautiful. You end up running around like a headless chicken. I've been there in the past. Whereas if you know where to come, it's much easier, of course. Oh, just an absolutely gorgeous morning. I just feel so excited that this is, you know, 5 minutes drive from my house. A big, massive, vast woodland to explore. Look at it. Absolutely stunning. It's crazy, and exciting times. Anyway, I'm just arriving at the little pine forest now that I had planned, and there's no fog in it. You can see that behind me. It doesn't look like there's any fog at all. However, this was a shot that was more reliant on light, and there's not going to be any light there for a while because the trees are huge and the sun's got to come up and over them, really, to an extent, before we get any light in that woodland at all. So I might explore down this path, see what's down here, try and make use of the fog whilst it's still here. Alright, so I had a nice little wander in that area. However, didn't really find anything compositionally, but it's a beautiful little spot, and one that I'm pretty sure I'll be returning to hopefully before the end of autumn, because it seems like there's a lot of potential there, so I just want to look out for. So I'm in my little pine forest now, and got a little bit of a composition in mind. I think it's going to be a cracker. But before I get my camera out, I wanted to talk actually about the next 2 P's of successful woodland photography, and I want to mention these two together because they kind of tie in with each other really, really well, and they are patience and persistence, 2 incredibly important factors to a successful woodland photographer. Now, not so much as I used to, but I used to get really frustrated, you know, when I'd be in the woodland with my camera, you know, when I'm out to take photographs. And I think looking back, the main reason to why that was because I'd be in a woodland just like this, for example, and it's beautiful, and my instinct is telling me that there's really, really good photographs to be had here. But my frustration would get the better of me, so I'd lose my patience, and maybe I wouldn't come back. And that's one thing that I've learned over the past few years, is how important patience is. Just to be patient with yourself, you know. Try not to get so frustrated if your instinct and your gut feeling is telling you that there's nice photographs to be had in a certain woodland area. Just trust it and practice patience. You know, these are factors that you could apply to almost any type of landscape photography. I was going to say photography, it's probably true as well, any type of photography. But for me, it's not really about the technical aspect of the photography, it's more about yourself, you know, being patient with yourself in your own mind. Try not to get too frustrated, and like I say, trust your instinct. Now, I wanted to mention persistence separately to patience, because I also think It deserves its own P. It deserves its own title. Again, I've got so much respect for people, especially woodland photographers, because I think it's so important to just keep coming back. Just keep coming back. You know, if you're reliant on conditions or light, or if you still haven't found composition, like I mentioned, but you know there's one there, persistence is so important. It might take days, weeks, months, or even years, like I mentioned before, but it's incredibly, incredibly important. And today, again, it's not really a good example because this is only my second time here. It's hardly been persistent, but I've had really, really nice conditions. So I'm very, very lucky. Perhaps we should add an L in there as well. You do need a bit of luck as a woodland photographer, particularly with conditions and stuff. But yeah, persistence, massively, massively important. And it's the same with anything that you want to be successful at, isn't it really? You need to be patient with yourself, and you need to practice persistence. So the last P I'll get onto after I've got set up and probably taken the photograph, but unfortunately we haven't got any light. I don't know what's going on. There's not even anything on the tops of the trees, so I'm assuming we're about 45 minutes after sunrise now. I'm assuming there's a bank of cloud that is blocking the light. However, I think I've learned that if I want that beautiful side light, this is going to be more suited for a sunset, which isn't a problem because I can return so close to home. The sun's going to set back here, whereas in that direction, the trees are huge. And I think by the time the sun comes up and over there anyway, the light might be a bit harsh, and yeah, we shall see. But for now, I've got an idea in mind. We've got some beautiful soft light in this little pine woodland, and I'm going to get myself set up. So I'm set up, and this is actually quite ironic because this seems to be fitting in quite well to what I was saying about patience and persistence, or patience. This is really frustrating. I'm getting frustrated. I felt really good earlier. I still feel fine, you know, I got that nice first shot, but now I don't feel like I'm getting, how do I say this now? What I'm seeing with my eyes is really beautiful. I don't feel like I'm getting that across with this photograph. Now I'm shooting this at f5.6 again. I just feel like it works really, really well for woodland, like I said, with my first photograph. And I'm focusing about 1/3 into the frame, so actually down on the floor here. So then it kind of softens off into the back of the photograph. There's a few elements that I like about this photograph that I really feel like are worth mentioning. So down here in the foreground, I found these, what have we got? 3 sort of fallen, I don't really know what they are, branches from some of these pine trees, maybe some trunks from really small pine trees. I'm not sure, but for me and for this composition, they're working really, really well as lead-in lines. They're in the sort of bottom third, taking up the bottom third of my whole photograph, and because we've got this beautiful moss all over this forest, which is one thing that really attracted me to this place in the first time that I came here. It really simplifies everything down at the bottom of this composition, and yeah, they're helping just to guide the eye in to all these beautiful trunks, all these beautiful pine trunks, and then because there's a lot of shadow in here, I find them quite almost menacing, all these beautiful dark trunks shooting up towards the top of the composition, and then right off in the background, like I mentioned, we've got must have a little bit of thin fog or something like that, and it just softens nicely as you get to the back, and there's a few autumn colours right off in the background, a few reds, a few yellows, things like that. Sorry, I'm just looking up because I think there's a bit of light starting to creep in now at the tops of the trees, which is nice. But 1/4 of a second ISO 100 f5.6. I'm going to grab it. I'm actually going to put it down to 1/5 of a second. 2-second timer. It's not bad. The soft light is quite nice. I'm going to do a little bit of dodging and burning, I think, on that one. Bring up the highlights and the whites, darken down them shadows a little bit, just increase the contrast, give it a little bit of a magical feel. Because that's how it looks to me. It's frustrating. Fog. I'll be back here when we've got fog again. I don't know. Anyway, I'll pop this photograph up for you guys to see. And then I'm going to give you guys the last P of woodland photography. I hope you like this photograph. So, feeling a bit disappointed with that photograph. I don't know why, something's not quite right about it, but I'm happy with the first shot. And of course, it's wonderful just to be out here in the morning. And like I say, I think with a bit of subtle editing, I can make something work with that. Now, the final P, and I had to think about this one because it doesn't really begin with P. But I've come up with a word that's relevant anyway, and that's physical, the physical aspect of the landscape. So this can be quite vague. So, you know, season, is it autumn? Are we getting some beautiful autumn colours? Are we getting some reds and yellows? Is it winter? Is the forest floor dusted with a little bit of snow? Spring, my bluebell photograph that I got back there in Shropshire, absolutely fantastic. But what I think this kind of ties into a little bit more is the conditions. I think they're so important. You know, I've been of an evening just browsing through Instagram, and I'd come across a woodland photographer that I'd never heard of before, and just, you know, scrolling away as you do, and his photographs are really nice, beautiful woodland shots. And then, you know, I'd kind of noticed the one thing that every single shot pretty much has in common is this fog. I think sometimes not even light, because from my experience it's quite seldom that you get light and fog, because a lot of the time once the light arrives, the fog's lifted anyway. So yeah, fog I think is as important as any of the others. I really think it's super important. I don't think you should be reliant on the conditions. I think you can still get some awesome, incredible shots to be proud of even without the fog, even when conditions are flat. When it's raining, for example, it's quite atmospheric, but for me, fog just lifts your photographs to like another level. It really does. So that's the final P, the physical aspect of the landscape or the woodland. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I really hope that's helped you guys out. I hope you've enjoyed this week's video, and what an absolute treat to have this woodland so close by to home. I have a few calendars left. I really wanted to mention that in this week's vlog. If you haven't bought one yet, please head over to my website if you want to pick one up, because they're probably only going to be on sale for another couple of weeks, to be honest, because by then it's probably going to be a little bit too late to get them sent out in time for Christmas and New Year. Especially being here in Germany, I don't really know how the post works. So yeah, there's a few left if you want one. I'd say get there sooner rather than later. So with that being said, thanks again for watching, and I shall see you guys next week on the next adventure. Out.